Beautiful, thanks. Thank you very much. That was somebody called Taff introducing somebody from England. Taff's the nickname for people in Wales. I said to her yesterday, she has a connection to the Welsh revival. There's something happening. So, well, it's always a privilege to be here. It was a privilege to live here and a privilege just to be back up here, and will always be an honor and one that I'll never take for granted. And I'm going to talk about a little bit related to some thoughts I've had since leaving, but before I do that, I'll just give a quick update for anybody who wants to know, and I do just want to release, drop a little seed in some hearts, I think. So we were sent from here, and we've been back in England now for about 2.25 years, and sent from here, living in Windsor, and I think I'm on the third rebuild of my life, basically. I think I did the first one, and then I came here and did another one, and now I've gone back and we're doing another one. And we're loving life, live in Windsor. Harry and Meghan are just down the road. They've just moved in, so that's good. And actually, we camped out the night, Sue and I, we camped out the night on the long walk just to be in the front row to see them go by. And it was that was an extraordinary thing to be, just to sit there and to watch. And I'm involved with the ESBS, Europe Shall Be Saved strategy team. And we're developing this strategy. That's a lot of fun. Who knew that what I learned running a prison in strategy might be used to evangelize a continent? I don't know how he does this, but he does. He works it out. And I'm involved with Ben, who, in my opinion, Ben Fitzgerald is one of the finest sons to ever leave this house. And what he's doing in Europe and awakening Europe is quite extraordinary. And we're connected to a couple of churches. Because we travel and you end up traveling weekends, we don't get there as much as we would like, but we go to a wonderful local church that was New Frontiers, still kind of is, a wonderful growing church, and God's doing some great stuff there, and then we go to Catch the Fire Sunday nights. But the seed I want to drop in your heart is that next year is 2020. I mean, that has to be prophetic. I mean, it's like whatever else we know, 2020 has to be prophetic. And I'm sure there's going to be things happening in other continents. But Ben Fitzgerald and us on the Europe Shall Be Saved strategy team have agreed that next year we're releasing a call and a cry. How many of you would come up to me and say, "My ancestors come from Europe"? How many of you? All right. Well, you've done it now. You're in trouble, because next year the cry is this: come back to Europe. Come back to a mission field, possibly the largest mission field left, and one of the most unreached people groups is Europe. And the cry is this: some of you can come back and live there and give your life, that's okay, but the cry will be, we want people to come back for 10 days, to flood 20 cities in Europe. And really, we're talking on the ESBS team of beginning a decade of evangelism, a decade of revival, a decade for a continent. And so you want to keep involved in that, go on to esbs.org and you'll see what's happening. Next year, as far as I know, I don't think it's finally confirmed, but I believe we'll be in Amsterdam next year for Awakening Europe, and there will be a school related to that and training people to flood 20 cities across Europe. And God is up to something in Europe. He really is. Sue and I have just received an invitation to go to the unveiling of the result of a competition, and the competition is to decide which of the 3 or 4 designs, has won the competition to be, Taff and Dave, you'll like this, the wall of testimonies. There's a man in England, he's an architect, he's for the last 6-7 years given up his life to fundraise and to develop a project. And his vision is this, that a wall will be built alongside one of the major motorways, freeways in England. He's been given the land already, and he's going to build a wall, and every one of those bricks in that wall will have a chip in it, and every one of those bricks will tell a testimony. You'll be able to go there, you'll be able to type in, "I want a testimony on diabetes," and you'll find a brick that will tell you a story. That should happen in every nation on earth. Like after the new building build, maybe down the I-5, a wall. So God's up to something, and we're very privileged. We're very privileged that we get to come back here and call this home. I've been wrestling with a little bit with not so much what to say, but how to say what I have to say. And I'm a whiteboard guy, as many of you know, but the big whiteboard wasn't available. And then I thought, well, maybe I'll risk PowerPoint. And I thought, well, I'm intimidated by Danny on that, you know. So I'm going to go for a chair, and you'll understand why. By the way, for those of you in the earlier session, I did at the last minute cancel my message on spiritual warfare. I decided it was inappropriate. But many of you, well, we all do, don't we? We come here. We come to this place, and we sit in a chair. Sometimes for a couple of days, sometimes for a week. If you're on staff, probably feels like you've worn out a dozen of those chairs on the front row, sitting in these chairs. We come to School of Ministry, we sit in chairs in this place. And different people come and they talk to us, and we hear messages, some incredible messages, of course. We've got the messages that Chris has brought us over the years, breaker messages that have changed the way we think, and prophetically, and bust stuff open. And we've got Danny with the stuff on relationships that we've had. And many speakers and people come to this house and teach us culture, the ways of the kingdom. But then there's a recurring message. A recurring message that I heard again on Tuesday morning as I sat in the BLN meeting. And Bill came in. I'm sitting there thinking, I need a fresh word from Bill. I haven't heard him for a couple of months. What's he going to bring? Turn to Matthew 6, he says. On earth as it is in heaven. And we come here and we sit and listen to that. And I've been thinking around this message, and you could call it a number of things, but because of what we're doing in this conference, I want to call it Towards an Excellent Life or an Excellent Organization. You see, when Bill gives us that message, I want to put it this way. He defines the chair that we sit in. I've taught, Chris has taught, we probably more than any, we've taught a lot about vision and mission. We teach about it a lot, but I've been thinking since I left, now there's something else. Why does this place in Northern California that you can hardly get to, that has to invest $1 million so that a plane will fly here from LA, with a team that came from a town up there that nobody would have heard of if it wasn't for Bethel? Barely. Why does it touch the world? Why has the message from this house shaken and rocked the world? I've just been thinking about that since I left. And there's vision and there's mission, but I want to suggest to you that organizations have a spirit. They have a spirit. And Bill, time and time again, with his 500-hour-long message, there's one subject, comes into rooms and comes into meetings and says, on earth as it is in heaven. And we travel from around the world and we sit back and go, I'm back in heaven. I'm back. On earth as it is in heaven. And I want to suggest to you that, you know, when you take wine, if you distill it, I've never done it, it would be an illegal thing to do. I know it was done here in a few places during the Prohibition. You take wine and you distill it, you get spirit. You get something potent. I want to suggest to you that there is a spirit in this house. A spirit in this house, not the Holy Spirit, obviously there's the Holy Spirit, but the spirit of this house. And everything points to that. It's the message that doesn't change. It hasn't altered. I confess, I'm probably not alone. Some of you might have sat in the room and thought, like me the other day, I need a fresh word from Bill, and he comes back in and it's like, I think I've heard that before, but no, I haven't heard it ever before. Yeah, I've heard it before, but I haven't heard it ever before. You know what he said the other day? Maybe you've been saying this loads of times. You made heaven on earth the commission. I'd already got most of my message prepared, but it was like, I'll take that. Heaven on earth, it's the distillation of the wine of this house. It's the Spirit. It's this chair that we get to sit in. It's a distillation. It's the Spirit. And we come in here, and everything fits in that one phrase of Jesus on earth as it is in heaven. Every one of the messages, Chris's message, what does he do? He stands and he preaches and he points to the chair. The prophetic, what God's doing in cities, what God's doing in governments, what God's doing in business. It fits in this chair. It serves this chair. It points to this chair. It's this distillation. It's this Spirit. Organizations, I believe, have a spirit. Did I bring my water? Oh, yeah. They have a spirit. I want to suggest you excellent organizations have a spirit at the center. Excellent organizations have a spirit. But I want to add something to this word excellence. I've been thinking about it a lot. This is an excellent organization. It's not perfect, but it is excellent. I think we need to make sure, though, that we talk about kingdom excellence and not just excellence, because there is an excellence in the world which is performance repackaged. Kingdom excellence is different. One of the characteristics of excellence in this house is a phrase. It's cancer-free zone. That is an excellent statement. If you are pursuing perfection, that statement fails you because you'll find cancer here. But to say it's a cancer-free zone is excellence. It's an excellent organization because we're pointing at this distillation, at this Spirit, the Spirit of heaven on earth as it is in heaven. And everything is contained in that, and the message hasn't changed and it doesn't change. And one of the keys, I believe, to excellence and sustaining what God is doing is that we need in the center of an organization such as this and such as yours, that Spirit, which is a distillation, which we don't change the message and we stay focused on, and that everybody can come and say, I'm serving that. Bill has a phrase, I make no apology, I'm going to quote Bill a lot this message. It's on earth as it is in heaven. You can't not quote him or Jesus. Bill says this. He says, I don't embrace your vision until I see that you've embraced mine. I'm going to risk changing what he says. I think he's saying this. I don't embrace your vision until I see that your life will serve that Spirit, the Spirit of this house. Will your life, will your gift, will your prophetic gift, will your counseling gift, will it serve that? Because then, the sky's the limit. You can run. Serving this Spirit. I've read a little bit just recently, not as much of it as I wanted to, but a guy called Horst Schultz, extraordinary man. He's the Ritz-Carlton guy. He's just written a book called Excellence Wins. Fascinating. The Ritz-Carlton group. I think churches are a bit like hotels. And it's why I've started to think, I don't think vision's enough, because for years I would say, what are you building? It's like we're building a church. Well, you could say that to people who build hotels. I'm building a hotel. The question is, what will define that hotel? What will define that church? It's the Spirit. Horst Schultz has put a Spirit, and he's moved on from Ritz-Carlton now, but it's fascinating to read about him. Some of the things that he was saying, he trains all his staff. He said, I train them. I train them with this. You are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. Oh, I like that. There was something about that. It was that excellence. Like there's a spirit of excellence. We're going to be the top 2 to 5% of hotels in the world. We're going to be excellent. And you are ladies and gentlemen that serve ladies and gentlemen. That's a fascinating book. He talks about, I don't recruit people for their ability. I recruit them because they want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. He tells a story of the bellboy in the hotel, and one of the guests had an appendicitis in the middle of the night. The bellboy took him to hospital and stayed there the night because he was still the guest of the hotel. It's because they had this spirit in the middle of what they're doing, and everybody's trained to serve that. Your ladies and gentlemen, serving ladies and gentlemen. I started thinking here, we've got revivalist janitors serving revivalists who use bathrooms. It's the same thing. It's the spirit. And excellent organizations, they have a spirit. I want to play around with maybe two extremely well-known passages of Scripture. Ephesians chapter 4. Ephesians chapter 4, there's this verse here. For his body has been formed in his image and is closely joined together and constantly connected as one. And every member has been given divine gifts. Every member has been given divine gifts to contribute to the growth of all. And as these gifts are imparted and operating effectively throughout the whole body, we are built up and made perfect in love. Paul's saying, there's the spirit, love. Every part of this body is fitted together, is serving that. The spirit of your church, Ephesus, you got to do this. Everyone work together. And of course, Paul also wrote to the Corinthians. At the end of chapter 12, he said, now I'll show you a more excellent way. And we have chapter 13. I have a feeling we've relegated chapter 13 to something we read at weddings, and we don't realize it's a blueprint for an organization. It's the blueprint for the church. Paul didn't write at the beginning of Corinthians, dear newlyweds. He wrote to the church in Corinth. Now I'll show you a more excellent way. Maybe we could just for a moment let 1 Corinthians 13 be like a metaphor. Like a metaphor. Imagine this, it's, if I can take Chris and he'll forgive me, and if he doesn't, he'll slap me. He does that occasionally. It would be like Chris preaching on the prophetic, but if there's no spirit, he has nothing. That's kind of what that verse is saying. It's like, if I do this, but I'm not serving that, this spirit that Paul is saying, which in this case is love. If I give everything I have to the poor, if I do this, if I do that, you see, you end up with a sum of parts, but they don't serve the whole. This illustration's for you, Eric. I thought about it carefully. I dedicate this illustration to you. Bread and butter. Bread and butter. Now, we talk about bread and butter, don't we? Like it's the ordinary, the mundane. Not when you've eaten good bread and butter, it isn't. The call to Europe was strong. Oh, I don't know, tartan in San Francisco. But you know what? If you put on a plate some yeast, some salt, some flour, some water, and pour some cream on top, it's nasty. It's plain nasty. You know, butter's the simplest thing, isn't it? It's just cream. That's all it is. Whipped up and it becomes butter. Get rid of that junk out of it, that liquid, and you get that beautiful, rich, golden butter. And the bread. I mean, the yeast on its own is disgusting. The salt's terrible. The flour is awful. The water's okay. But they need to work together. They need to work together to create the bread and the butter that Eric, I know, loves so much. See, we need to work together. See, excellent organizations, they have a spirit at the center there of everything they do. They have excellence. Excellence, kingdom excellence, I believe. My contribution to this advance about viewing forwards. Where are you going? What are you building? I want to send you on a journey towards excellence. And excellence has a spirit in the middle that everyone knows to serve. Your ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. Your revivalist janitors serving revivalists who use bathrooms. There's a spirit, there's something. You know, we have so many messages here, so many pieces, but we need something that draws it all together. And as I start looking at organizations that are successful around the world, I start thinking what they have in common is excellence, and they have a spirit, and they're focused on something. See, excellence. We talk for a moment about excellence. Excellence is sustainable. It is sustainable. Perfection isn't. It's not sustainable. You see, the cry of this house on earth as it is in heaven, the cry of a cancer-free zone is sustainable. But if we just spent a year and said we have to see success in every cancer case that walks through these doors, and if we don't, we're stopping praying, you see, perfection will end. Perfection's not sustainable. We are drawn by love to excellence. We're drawn, our hearts are drawn. It's a drawing of heaven. But we're driven to perfection. Something inside us drives us. Excellence builds the whole. Perfection wears us out. Excellence points to the King. Kingdom excellence points to the King. It's actually in the Word, His excellency. It's there. But perfection points to us. Excellence is not so much what I do, but the heart behind what I do. Perfection is results driven. Excellence knows there is more, yet is satisfied. Perfection is never enough, but is unsatisfied. See, excellence has a spirit that it serves, and everything is aimed and is targeted at serving that. And in this house, it's on earth as it is in heaven. And you can't find anything, I don't believe, in the Word of God that isn't in that one great phrase of Jesus. Pray on earth as it is in heaven. It's all in there. It's like I have a story. I was privileged to be ministering to some Roman Catholic priests recently, and the whole of the story doesn't matter too much, but in it, I have a communion service that I teach, and I have a very large wine glass. And I have 12 shot glasses, big shot glasses, not baby ones. I fill them up with 2 bottles of wine. I have a wine glass that holds 2 bottles of wine. I go through the 4 cups of the Passover. I go through the 4 cups of the Jewish wedding. I go through the 4 cups of the 4 matriarchs. And I do it for this reason. Because one day up here, I was serving communion, and I took the little cup, and I looked at it and I thought, that is a pathetically small cup. Jesus said, this cup is the new covenant in my blood. And as I was reading it, I saw this Bible in the wine glass. All of this is in there. It's the same as on earth as it is in heaven. It embraces everything. All of this is in that cup. You're all going to want bigger wine glasses now in your communion, I know. But one of the priests came up to me afterwards. It warmed my heart more than, and it was a wonderful experience. They participated with me in communion, which was a very precious moment of unity. And one of them came up to me, he said, when I became a priest, I was given a chalice. And I had my chalice engraved. And on the bottom of the cup, I had engraved the first verse of the Bible in Latin. And on the edge of the rim of the cup, I had the last verse. Because I knew that all of this is in there. I'm looking for a chalice now. I'm gonna find myself a Roman Catholic priest who knows how to do this stuff. But it's the same as on earth as it is in heaven. What we've done is we've distilled something down. And you know, Jesus did it, of course, and here's the Spirit, but here's, as it were, a piece of this that I want to try and teach. You see, I was sent from this house where every day, every week, I got to sit in the chair of on earth as it is in heaven. Sue and I lived in heaven on earth, for 15 years. Except it can't have been quite heaven on earth because our grandchildren weren't here. And I say that humorously and seriously because the reality is this place isn't perfect. It isn't quite heaven on earth. But the spirit that we are targeting makes it a place where we can experience that. You see, the spirit of an organization, it's a combination of things. It's kind of identity, it's reputation, it's how it makes you feel. I bought a new car last year, had a terrible sales experience. It was terrible. And I had to end up going back to the same place for the servicing. And I wanted to say to them, I wish the service department sold them because you're much better than them. There was a different spirit in the two departments. See, this place, the spirit, this makes you feel. I guarantee every one of you, it makes you feel God's good. Doesn't it? And Bill's 4 great points in his book, The Way of Life, that we were privileged to sit and hear him tell us the first time. God's good, nothing's impossible. Jesus has won absolute victory, and I am significant. You come in this house, you sit in the chair and you go, God's good. Nothing's impossible. I am significant. Oh, Jesus has won absolute victory. Whew. We sit in that chair. You fly from all around the world to sit and feel that. Sue and I, 18 months ago, we walked into a hospital room. It was one of the hardest things we've ever done. We're not the only ones that have done it. 2 of our spiritual kids had a stillborn baby. Full-term stillborn baby. And we got in the room. And they were in the chair. We were so proud of them. They were in the chair. Their darkest day. And they're crying. But they're saying, God's good. God is good. You're so good. And we got to stand around them, which is what happens in this house, because around that spirit, there are principles. There are these principles around this chair that we sit in, these principles. And Sue and I got to be, as it were, around that chair and go, it's a mystery. It's a principle that protects the spirit. Principles protect the spirit. It's a mystery. Your baby's died. God doesn't send that stuff. It didn't come from him. I don't understand it. God's good. Nothing's impossible. I don't know the answer right now. You two are amazing. You're going to make it. And they were able to be in the chair. Because that's what happens in this house. We get trained to sit in this chair on earth as it is in heaven. It feels like hell right now, but on earth as it is in heaven. And many of us have come here with difficulties, or we've had crises while we're here. And people are gathering around us, and these principles, we're surrounded with these principles of people saying, God's good. I just got diagnosed with cancer, but you're good. Yeah, you're good. You're good. It's a mystery. Nothing's impossible. You're going to make it. These principles protect the spirit. Mystery protects the spirit. Believe it or not, mystery protects the spirit. Because if we didn't have mystery to protect the spirit that says no cancer, when we have cancer, we'd quit praying instead of keep on asking for more. It protects the spirit. But then something happened. We got sent from this house. And now I go to places and I'm like, the parts are there. There's some good worship. I could step in the worship and maybe, at the end of worship, what for me is the unthinkable happens. Somebody just steps up and says, okay, thank you. You can be seated now. I'm going, oh gosh. He's here. He's here. And they miss it. The purpose of worship isn't to usher in the presence of God, it's to usher in the presence of people so they can experience the presence of God. And the parts are there. The worship was great. It was Jen's latest song. It's great. I'm there. I'm worshiping. And then somebody steps up and does a few announcements and they say, well, why don't you stand up? Paul's here and I've got a good message. But there's no chair. The chair's not there. You see, in this house, that chair is visible all the time. We joke around here, you could have a school of supernatural knitting in this house. You could, because you can see the chair. Because you can see the chair. You can teach on the edge of some subjects out of sociology or business and stuff like that, and it's okay, because you can see the chair. But when you can't see the chair, you can't preach those messages until people have seen the chair. And I've been sent from this house, and I go to places and I have to show them the chair. I have to show them the chair. You know what I'm saying, don't you? You see, Paul Mannering, I like to teach some things. I like to teach some structure, some strategy, some administration, and other things like that. I teach a lot of different things. I think Sue was the one who told me that I needed to start doing this. It was about last September. She said, you need to make sure that whenever she didn't use these words, but I'm going to turn it into this, whenever you preach in a church where you can't see the chair, you need to start by praying for the sick. And we all know this, but you know, you're in a church and you got a 45-minute message because you're trained in Bethel and they're all 45 minutes minimum. You got a 45-minute message, there's 35 minutes, and you're standing there thinking, I need to show them the chair. This is going to take a bunch of time. But we have to show them the chair on earth as it is in heaven. If you don't get this, all the parts, all that lovely song and all that you're doing, it doesn't work. You got to see the chair, the Spirit on earth as it is in heaven. Got to do that. So I find myself in strange scenarios where I know that what I have to do is to forget the watch and forget my notes and know my job right now, I've got to show you the chair. A verse that I don't think I ever would have thought would have become one of my favorites, but it's become one of my favorites. I didn't come with clever words. I came to demonstrate power. It scares me. It scares me. I think it should. See, Paul was birthed into the Christian faith by a power encounter. So he lived the rest of his life demonstrating power. So you have to show them the chair. I need to introduce people to the chair so that they know this is what we live for. I was with somebody recently. They'd just been to a training course, and they said it was really good. And I won't give too many details. There's nothing in me would want to dishonor it, but they were just talking. They were saying, you know, it's really great for growing your church. You know, there's a lot of success in growing the church numerically. They're doing lots of the right things, and they're teaching about leadership principles and how to train your staff and all that sort of stuff. And they're growing. But we don't have the chair. That's really what he said. We don't have the chair. See, one of my passions and frustrations is that churches with the chair, or that should have the chair, aren't growing as well as they should. Just an observation. There's a lot of churches that grow well out of administration gifts and teaching gifts and organization gifts and gathering hundreds of small groups and home groups and doing stuff like that. My conclusion is this. We need the chair, but we need to make sure that everything else points at the chair. And that's what excellent organizations do. So I found myself, you know, I got sent from this house. I'm not sitting in that chair every day. I'm not experiencing what I experienced every day. But I know that the spirit of this house is what I live for. I don't want to teach schools on strategy unless the supernatural is in the mixture. In fact, I refuse to. And excellence is when you have a spirit and everything serves the spirit. And the principles, and Bill leads by principles. He leads in this ways. He's given us this atmosphere as on earth as is in heaven, this prayer, this spirit, and then these principles that are around it. And many of us can remember moments when those principles were dropped in our laps. And then there's the culture, of course. The culture surrounds that. And the culture is the environment in which the spirit can thrive. And I could talk a lot on culture, but I won't, because it's not what I want to get to today. But all the culture serves the spirit. You see, the culture of empowerment, the culture of freedom, it's freedom to serve the spirit. It's not freedom to serve you, it's freedom to serve the spirit. See, that's what the whole thing about Ephesians is. Every part fitted together, every joint supplies, every part working properly for the building up of the body in love, in that case. See, I think that verse is the verse that defines excellence in the church. Everybody fitting together. So we have the spirit, we have the principles, we have the culture, and then we have everything else in this church. Every ministry, every expression, even the fivefold, they're out there. Every gift is out there, and all of them are targeted on serving the spirit. The accountant serves the spirit. The janitor serves the spirit. The structure serves the spirit of this house, this organization. And many of you, you're going to go to the bookshop. I know you are, and you'll get a shopping cart load of stuff that you'll take home with you. And that's wonderful, but I want to tell you something. You've got to put the chair in the cart. Because if you don't take the chair, all of those books aren't going to help you. You'll just have yeast and flour and salt and water and cream, because it has to serve the whole. You've got to take the chair with you. When you leave this house, it's the spirit of the house. I love the story of Esther. And on March the 21st, 2008, Chris gave me a prophetic word just before I slipped into unconsciousness. The two are not related. You remember? Mordecai. He said, "You're Mordecai." I drifted into unconsciousness. I actually thought about it in the middle of the night when I was literally fighting for my life. I was fighting for my life the day that Bill preached the message, "I want my knife back." I wanted my life back. I got it. So the prayer worked. Chris said, "You're Mordecai." I thought, well, that's cool. I champion women. I get that. That was all I could get until I was going to a meeting last summer with Chris. And I was walking along the road. It was World Cup semi-final day, actually. England lost, sadly. So I'll never forget the day. And I heard the Lord say to me, "Mordecai. Mordecai adopts orphaned influences." So I heard him say. He did. She was orphaned, yeah? She was an influencer. And here's what happened. She gets cleaned up, purified for 6 months. She gets beautified for 6 months. And then she got focused. She got focused. Mordecai focused her. See, I believe it's time for the church to get focused. He focused. You see, who knows if your church wasn't birthed for such a time as this? Get the focus. Get the focus. Why? Because the world, which I believe is represented by the King, is looking for excellence in the bride. And excellence in the bride will invite the King to raise the scepter and say, "Come in." But you see, we haven't had that excellence thing going on, to be honest, because I think, and although I love it, I think we got stuck on Ephesians 4:11 and we missed the rest of the chapter. I love it, the fivefold, I love it. The apostle, the pastor, the prophet, the evangelist, teacher, I'm good with it all. We need it all, but I think we might have missed what the whole thing was about. The chapter, there's one body and one spirit, just as also you were called in one hope of your calling, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, the chair. There's a focus. We need the apostle, we need the prophet, we need the pastor, we need the evangelist, we need the teacher. We need a whole host of other gifts. But if they are not serving that. And then we see it goes on until we all attain to the unity of the faith. Until we can all gather around the Spirit. Serve the Spirit on earth as it is in heaven. You might be a doctor on earth as it is in heaven in my practice. You might be a businessman on earth as it is in heaven. You're a mum on earth as it is in heaven. You're a school teacher on earth as it is in heaven. A unity of faith. We're all in this together. Our expressions are different, but we're all looking until we all attain to the unity of the faith and of the knowledge of the Son of God. To a mature man, or how we need to be the mature men and women. Mature men and women will attract the kings of this earth to invite us in, to bring wisdom to the measure of the stature which belongs to the fullness of Christ. And as a result, we're no longer to be children, tossed here and there by waves. If you don't have that chair, you get tossed here and there. You get the latest idea, the latest book, the latest online course. It comes into your ministry. They're not all bad, but it sways you off over here or it sways you off over there because you don't have that in the middle. And you're checking out, does that new revelation, does that new ministry, does that new teaching, does it serve the spirit of our house on earth as it is in heaven? No longer tossed around by the waves and carried by every wind of doctrine, by the trickery of men, by craftiness in deceitful scheming, from whom the whole body, being fitted and held together by that which every joint supplies, according to the proper working of each individual part, causes the growth of the body for the building up of itself in love. I just really have a challenge today. What's the spirit of your organization? What's the spirit of your church? What's the spirit of your ministry? I taught this recently. I taught it, and there was a businessman there, a very successful businessman with a large national company. And it's in the car industry. I taught this, he said, "You're right, Paul." He said, "You're right. My organization has a spirit. It's called family. It's got nothing to do with selling cars." See, it doesn't necessarily have to do with this product or service. There's a spirit, there's this distillation of your language, of your vision, of your mission. It's your reputation. It's how you make people feel when they come into your environment. And everything is working towards that. You see, if out here we have all of the ministries, we have all the departments of our church, if they haven't got sight of that, they're serving themselves. And they'll serve themselves. It's how bureaucracy happens. It's actually how the routinization of revival happens. Because we end up out here working in our department, maintaining our team, holding on through the difficulties and protecting our department and our team. And gradually we lose sight of the Spirit. But when we keep in sight the Spirit, we are journeying towards excellence. You see, excellence doesn't finish. Excellence is never completed. Excellence is a journey. Excellence is my heart that's able to stand in here and say, this is a cancer-free zone. And there'll probably be people in here with cancer. But it doesn't stop the statement. It doesn't stop the declaration. So we had a conversation recently with somebody who said that thing you teach about mystery, it's a cop-out. Are you kidding me? That's not a cop-out. Oh, no. It's not a cop-out. No. It protects the Spirit. It makes sure that we still have a place here that says cancer-free zone, and people with cancer can come in here with hope. What's the spirit of your organization? What's the distillation of everything that's written on your walls? See, the reality is, it's no good having it written on your walls. It has to be lived out so that people can come and sit and experience it and feel different. And have people walking around them telling them, you can make it. You can do this. See, I've realized we We've been sent. It's a different life. It's different. We're traveling. We're not in the same church every Sunday with the same group of people. We're not always surrounded by people who see the world through the lens that we were trained to see the world in this house. The lens that took us back to Europe when people said to us, why would you go to Europe where the enemy's big and the fruit's small? They said that to my wife. That was a mistake. You haven't seen the Europe we're going back to. The fruit's big, the enemy's small where we're going. But we find ourselves with people around us who don't see that way. They haven't got the Spirit. They haven't seen heaven on earth. They're not constantly being protected, or the Spirit being protected by these glorious truths, these principles of mystery, the goodness of God. Nothing's impossible. You can do it. And most important, God's here. God's here. I felt it the other day. I won't go into the details, but I felt it the other day just in the BLN meeting. People gathered around and were blessing us. I'm like, oh, this feels so good. It was awkward as well. There was some embarrassment in it, to be honest, but it felt, the Spirit in it felt so good to be surrounded. What's the spirit of your organization? What does it look like if you distill it down? If you put it in 3 words on your wall, and will people live it and experience it? Because it is your reputation. The spirit of your organization is not what you think it is or think it should be. It's what people will say it is. It's what people will say when they go for lunch at Red Robin. That place. Wow. Nothing's impossible there. There's no cancer there. I love it when people have conversations. Sometimes they have conversations with me. They say, is there really no cancer at Bethel? It's like, gosh, I'd love to be able to tell you that there isn't. But it's not about perfection. It's about a pursuit of excellence. You see, sometimes other things happen. We have to be careful what we put in this chair. I've noticed that there's people out there that they want to put other stuff in this chair. They'll take Chris's message, his message on wealth, and they'll put it in this chair and they'll go, see, Bethel's got a prosperity gospel. No, we don't. We got an on earth as it is in heaven gospel. That's our gospel. We've got a culture over here of generosity, but it serves that. See, people will put that in the chair. They'll put culture of honor. Culture of honor is amazing. We love it, but it's not in the chair. It serves the chair. There's people who teach stuff here. I taught gift of administration. Who knew I'd teach gift of administration in this house? But I teach it to serve the Spirit. I teach a simple truth. An administrator who doesn't understand the power of God will reduce a move of God to what man can do without God. In other words, an administrator who doesn't have that chair in their life will be out here doing it on their own and will reduce a move of God to what they can do without God. People put the wrong stuff in this chair. They find the weirdest thing they can find about Bethel, and they find it on the internet, and they put it in the chair, and they say, see, Bethel, it's weird. Weird stuff. They do this at Bethel. And they make it our identity. It's not our identity. What's happened is we have a culture of freedom that serves the Spirit, and in the process of a culture of freedom, we risk weird stuff. But without the freedom and without the risk for the weird, nobody is able to truly serve that Spirit. What's the spirit of your organization? What is it? That's what I want to ask you today. Esther, just after Mordecai sent the message to Esther, the message, if you remain silent, relief and deliverance will come from somewhere else. Church, if you don't have a clear understanding of the spirit of your organization, relief and deliverance will come from someone else. And it will be an inadequate answer because it won't be on earth as it is in heaven. Who knows, Esther, if you have not attained royalty for such a time as this? Who knows if you have not found yourself in this room, your journey that got you in this room? I'm not saying it's all about Bethel. Of course I'm not. But I am saying that this is us and this is kingdom and this is an on earth as it is in heaven place. And as I understood the other day, and I've believed for a long time, just never heard Bill say it the way he did, It's the biggest commission you'll ever get. It's bigger than raise the dead and cast out demons and cleanse lepers. It's bigger than disciple nations because it embraces everything. Who knows if you have not found yourself into this room for such a time as this to define the spirit of your organization and to turn every head in your organization to point to that spirit and say, janitor, that's what you live for. Administrator, that's what you live for. Cook, that's what you live for. Children's worker, that's what you live for. Because that's what an excellent organization looks like. But 2 verses later, Esther would say this: if I die, I die. I don't know why I said earlier to somebody, I feel emotional today. Maybe it's because I'm not up on this stage as often. Or maybe it's because I feel like something going on inside of me that says, if I die, I die. But I've got to show people the chair. I've got to show people the chair. We have to show people the chair. You all know what it's like. Or maybe you don't. When you stand in front of somebody with an impossible situation and you speak faith and you pray and there's a dozen things going on in your head and a dozen reasons you could work out why this couldn't possibly happen, and then a few weeks later you get the report. No cancer. Shoulder healed. Infertility overcome. I have a feeling if I die, might be about dying to myself all over again. If I die, I die. We've just recently, as the ESBS team, we made a declaration. Europe won't be saved without the power of the Holy Spirit. But Europe won't be saved without walking together with brothers and sisters who celebrate the Holy Spirit differently. We're trying to work out how do I keep this chair alive and walk with people who don't quite walk the same as me. But I know I have to keep the chair. So I feel that to call you today. What's the spirit of your organization? You know, I'm not very good at copying. I've probably got a little bit of an arrogant streak somewhere in there that I don't tend to be the sort of person who just kind of grabs hold of something and copies it. I've been thinking about this. On earth as it is in heaven. You're not copying it from Bill. You're copying it from Jesus. That's right. Bill's done an incredible job of presenting this message to us. I remember when Chris taught, and I believe it's still contained in what I'm about to say, but he said, denominations gather around what we agree over, and apostleships gather around relationship. I have a feeling that apostleships gather around bringing heaven to earth. Now, I know they might not all agree out there, and there might be some apostles who say, well, no, we don't necessarily agree. Well, I'll leave that to them to sort out. But I actually have a feeling that the apostolic gathers around this, because that's what it says in Ephesians. It's so clear to me, so clear that it says this: when he ascended on high, he led captive a host of captives, and he gave gifts to men. Where did he give them from? From heaven. He gave them from heaven to earth. So those that carry the gifts are bringing heaven to earth, on earth as it is in heaven. I don't have any qualifications in theology. I've read the book. I love the book. I think it says this: those fivefold carry gifts from heaven to earth. And the apostolic, the kingdom move of God, has a commission. It's Bill's commission. It's Jesus' commission on earth as it is in heaven. Is that the spirit of your organization? Are you willing to die to self? Are you willing to say, I'll just take that. I'll run with that. I'm not just going to put it on a wall. I'm going to live for it. I'm going to make sure that everyone in my organization has interpreted it to their department, to their team. I'm going to make sure that every culture that we have of honor, of joy, of hope, of salvation, of empowerment, of the prophetic, everyone points at the spirit of on earth as it is in heaven. And this is the sense I had. Some of you need to come to the front and say, if I die, I die. But I'm going to take this. And I want to be an excellent organization. You know, I'm going to dare to say this. I believe that this concept of the chair of the Spirit is a key to avoiding burnout. Because we get to serve the Spirit and not perfection. Not the demands of man, but the invitation of heaven. Not to get it all right, but to believe cancer-free. I never forget, Sue and I, one Thursday, we stood by that bit of stage over there. We were doing a school down here. There was a man in England dying of cancer. We ended up doing a FaceTime with him, and I copied Bill that day. We walked around this sanctuary and we said, on that spot, this was healed. On that spot, this was healed. In this room. And that man, he lived for 40 days. He taught me so much. In those 40 days, he taught me so much. But it was this. That's the spirit of this house. You're sitting in a chair. And that chair represents the spirit, as it were, of this house. It's what you came here for. Buy your books. Buy the music. Buy it all. But would you please take the chair home with you? Would you take the Spirit home with you? Wouldn't you put it at the center of everything you do? And I believe this. Some of you need to get down the front and you need to say, if I die, I die. I'm going to take the chair home. I'm going to take it home. See, I'm taking this chair with me. I did actually buy a chair in this house once, and I have got it at home. It's a revival chair, so I kind of have it. And I believe it's simply this. On earth as it is in heaven, I'll live for that. I'll lay down my life for that. I'm not going to change the message. Some of you struggle. You couldn't be Bill. I don't know that I could be in the same way as this and preach the same message in the genius way that he does, because it always sounds different. And some of you need to lay that down, and you need to say, I'm going to go back. And I'm going to lay down the spirit of my house on earth as it is in heaven. I'm not going to change the message. I'm going to make it the focus. We're going to be a house that raises up revivalists who clean toilets, for revivalists who visit churches, who need bathrooms. Everyone in our house is going to be able to see the chair. Everyone's going to be able to see the spirit. And we're going to walk around, as it were, and we're going to know that there are principles that protect the spirit. And that every culture is going to serve the Spirit. And every department, every ministry, every gift, every office is going to serve the Spirit. I believe today there's a call for you to run hard to excellence. Run hard to excellence with the focus that we read about. It's the answer to being tossed around. It's the answer. You see, we've seen this, haven't we? We've seen a word that gets twisted and distorted and becomes a heresy. It's because we lost sight, I want to suggest to you, of the Spirit. See, for me, the Spirit is the assignment and the person. His name is Jesus. It's the assignment and the person. And He's here. He's here. And you might be in hell right now, but you can sit in the chair on earth as it is in heaven. And in this great house, you can be surrounded by people who will come up to you. Maybe the janitor will be one of them and say, nothing's impossible. God's good. Jesus has won absolute victory. You are significant. It's a mystery why your wife just died. But He's here. He's here. He's here. Holy Spirit, would you come? I pray today that you would release these people at the front to know the spirit of their organization, to be willing to put aside other temptations, other things, and to live for this one thing which contains everything on earth as it is in heaven. On earth as it is in heaven, in every city represented, in every nation represented in this room. Let's pursue excellence. Let's be the excellent bride that Esther was. Let's be adopted. Let's be purified. Let's be beautified. Let's be focused. And let's be ready for the kings of this earth to invite us in. Do you know that one of the meanings of the word Esther is star? Arise and shine, for your light has come. And the kings of the earth are going to invite you in because of the brightness of the star that is you, because you got focused on this day, on a spirit of your organization. And I ask that you would give to every one of us the courage and the discipline to never change the message. And for me especially, if I go somewhere and there's no chair, I don't care about my message. I want to show them the chair. I want to show them the Spirit. I bless you in Jesus' name. Amen.